Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the SPSP Medicines Reducing Medicine's Harm Across Transitions conference call. My name is Janeda, and I will be your operator for today. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question-and-answer session in which at that time, all lines will be unmuted. You may also submit questions about the presentation using the chat box in the WebEx portion. If at any time you require operator assistance, please press star followed by 0, and we will be happy to assist you. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded. I would now like to turn the conference over to your host for today, David Maxwell. Please proceed.
And thank you very much for that welcome, and welcome everyone to our September WebEx on reducing medicine's harm across transitions. We're joined today by our guest board presenting NHS Lanarkshire, and so welcome particularly to our friends from Lanarkshire who we'll introduce very, very shortly. So for those who haven't been to one of our WebExes before, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you who are new. For those who have joined us for a repeat, welcome back, and we're glad that you've chosen to join us again. The purpose of this WebEx is really to support the learning and sharing between boards regarding medication reconciliation as a whole system. So instead of focusing on what has been work that's around siloed admissions, discharges, and perhaps something that might have happened in primary care, we're really encouraging the sharing and learning across the whole board, bringing together people working on improvement initiatives in all of these areas. So we really want this to be an open session for learning, to really pay attention to what NHS Lanarkshire are sharing in terms of their successes, but also to learn potentially what currently their challenges are and how others can support them in their improvements. So as everyone knows from the previous WebExes, if you're actually not a presenter, your phone line is actually automatically on mute. We really have had feedback from previous WebExes in the past that we've had a lot of background noise from lines from non-speakers. However, at the end of the session today, once NHS Lanarkshire have finished presenting, we'll open all the lines to support a question and answer session. We really do encourage during the WebEx presentations that we use the chat box to communicate, and I have asked everyone if you wouldn't mind just letting us know who you are and where you're from in the chat box as a way of introductions. But for those who've not used the chat box function before, at the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a chat icon. And if you click on that chat icon, there'll be an ability then to actually start chatting with the group. But the really important part to make sure that everybody can see what you're saying is you actually pick all participants at the bottom from the drop-down menu. I tend to get a lot of private messages, which is lovely, but it would be great if you could actually ensure that you select all participants to make sure that everybody can see what you're asking and what you're saying. So again, can I ask now everybody that's joined the WebEx to use the chat box? Thanks, Becky and Lauren, to letting us know that you're in from Shetland, to introduce yourselves and let us know where you're dialing in from. So as I mentioned previously, this is a monthly series that we host, and we've had a number of boards present already this year. NHS Borders presented in August. Previous to that was Forth Valley and Grampian before that. And we as a national team have been learning and listening to all of the key presentations and points. And it's fair to say that we continue to reflect and understand that MedsRec itself is a very complex clinical process. It's been a challenge for boards that have been trying to achieve reliability for a number of years. And we've learned a couple of things about some of the key elements to that to actually gain success, and particularly around senior medical engagement in the acute care setting. And we're really keen to learn from boards that are looking at ways of catching feedback across the points of transition regarding that quality of information that's being shared. Particularly in Borders, now I have to apologise I wasn't available to attend last month's WebEx, but I'm very much aware of their nurse-led medication reconciliation services in the mental health unit, and it was great that they were able to share that at the WebEx in August. And they too were able to share the importance and their experience around senior clinical engagement and the effect that it had on their MedsRec. And they've also got a medication reconciliation project in primary care that they'd be more than happy for you to contact them to learn more about. So for those who are not aware, all of the WebExes, the recordings and slides are all available on our website, freely to download, and the audio recording so you can listen to the actual conversations alongside the slide set. So without further ado, I'd like to pass across to our board that's been invited to present today. And just passing the ball now to our team in Lanarkshire, and hopefully you'll be able to then have the privilege of being able to pass the slides forward. So, Connie, is that you?
That's me, yes. Hi.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So I have got with me today Dr. Brian McGurn and two of our pharmacists, Sarah Connolly and Ali Marshall, and I am Connie Charrett, the Improvement Advisor, and Jane Merkin, who's our Head of Patient Safety, is going to kick off.
Excellent, thanks Connie. So I thought from a strategic patient safety perspective it would be useful to give you a little bit of a context setting session before we get into the work. So we had a board strategic prioritised plan that was endorsed in 2014, and we had at that point set out a very clear aim around reducing harm from medicine. Although, as I'm sure you would all know, having a plan in itself doesn't necessarily mean that the organisation then takes active ownership of this issue of reducing harm from medicines across the system and the interfaces. And so we have had significant challenges, and whilst there has been some real pockets of fantastic work, I think overarchingly there has been challenges around ensuring that there's a true multidisciplinary team approach to the work. And as David was alluding to, the challenges of clinician engagement and ownership. Having said that, you'll hear today about some of the good work that has taken place, and colleagues will share some of the learning. We also then have had some successes by focusing on some key priority areas and running a collaborative over 2 years. And I think, again, as an organisation, we keep going back to the number of competing priorities that there are, not just in relation to patient safety and quality improvement, but bigger organisational challenges that sometimes are preventing people from being able to focus. So for me, one of the messages is about the timing, and I think timing is crucial. We've recently had the opportunity to refresh our safety strategic plan, and that's been endorsed by the board. And we've been very clear on what are our corporate priorities going forward, not just in relation to patient safety, but more explicitly medicines. There is across Lanarkshire a broader piece of organisational work that's being progressed around medicines, and it's part of an efficiency and productivity programme. And obviously we're aligning as much as we possibly can and seeing what are the levers that might support. In terms of opportunities, we recently had a new diabetologist who joined the organisation who has a real passion and interest in relation to reducing harm from high-risk meds and insulin. And so we see that as a really great opportunity to connect the medicines reconciliation process with the outcomes of reducing harm. And so we're just about to kick off a piece of prototyping work in one ward in Monklands Hospital, which will be hopefully an opportunity to learn our way into reducing harm from insulin, but also ensuring that as part of that medicines reconciliation happens on a reliable basis. And I guess my last message before I hand over is that we're on a journey, and I think we would be lying if we said we've got it all nailed. We've got a long, long way to go. Anyway, I'll hand over to colleagues to share some of the good work that they've been doing to date.
So we have been working on, or our mental health colleagues have been working on medicines reconciliation, and this is their data really, and they are very much similar to the work that's going on in Borders, in that it's a nurse-led medicines reconciliation process, and that's been forced really from necessity rather than drive to do the work. They don't have a pharmacist input, so they are measuring medicines reconciliation within 24 hours of admission using the nursing staff, and it's very much driven by the medical staff. Unfortunately, that is not carried through the whole organisation, and I don't think that really that model would work in an acute medical receiving unit, and I'm quite sure that Ali will be able to tell you a bit more about that.
Hello, I'm Ali Marshall. I'm the senior pharmacist working on the receiving unit here at Myers Hospital. This is a small portion of our data. I didn't want to overload you with too much. So what you're looking at here is a month before the change of doctors and a month after. And I think what it shows probably is that we haven't fixed it yet, where our accurate list We still struggle, even when we had experienced medical staff. We were still struggling to have an accurate list of medicines documented for every patient. And the documenting of a plan for patients is particularly problematic. We've been working on this for a long time, and we still have times where we are down at 0%, which is obviously a little disappointing. If we go to the next slide, this is again some examples of our data. The top graph is the patients who have got percentage of patients who have an accurate Cardex before pharmacy input. There are gaps in the data here for which I have to apologise, but this data is collected in addition to our other patient safety data for medicines reconciliation, and sometimes we simply don't have the time to do both. But what I think you can see there is a very obvious difference between before pharmacy input and after pharmacy input. The graph underneath is for patients who have been admitted to and discharged from the ward, who've been in for at least 24 hours. That doesn't necessarily mean they have had pharmacy input. There has been the opportunity for it, but if the patient has been in over a weekend, then I don't cover the ward at the weekend. There's nobody else there from the pharmacy, so therefore they've not necessarily had pharmacy input. But you can see the difference that pharmacy input can make. Next slide.
Yes. Hi, I'm Sarah Connolly. I'm the lead pharmacy for surgery in Monklands, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we've changed the way we approach clinical pharmacy and surgery in Monklands. We've always been understaffed for clinical pharmacists in surgery in Monklands, and we've never been able to offer a service for all the wards. But we had the opportunity with the redesign of critical care in Monklands when they cohorted all the critical patients into one ward and shut a standalone HDU, and also pharmacists returning from maternity leave and some vacancies being filled. We had the opportunity to really look at how we provided services to surgery. Pharmacy also purchased some iPads with the Pharmacy View application, and that allows you to view patients in real time irrespective of the ward location, and that meant we were able to decide to try to roll out a different way of working from the traditional one pharmacist, one ward model. We decided to roll out a priority service to all the general surgical wards. So how did we do it? Well, first of all, we had to think about how we prioritise. We had to think about how we were going to prioritise people. So yeah, I can discuss how we agreed the roles and responsibilities regarding MedRec in the different settings. Okay, we can't provide medicine reconciliation to every patient in surgery as a whole because we don't have enough pharmacists and we never have been, but we can use the Pharmacy View tool to identify the patients in the surgical receiving that haven't had medicine reconciliation done, and we can, as a pharmacy team, see them, and then we've now been able to roll out medicine reconciliation to surgical work, whereas previously we only did, sorry, I'll start again. So how did we do this? We changed the way we worked by changing our priorities, and we've moved away from the one pharmacist, one ward model to working together as a team. We now prioritise the patients in this way. As you can see, 4 years our surgical receiving ward, and every patient in surgical receiving, when there are pharmacists available, gets seen. The red patients are those patients who are considered high risk. They need to be seen daily. Either they're on high risk meds or they're in potentially serious interactions on their meds that require monitoring. Perhaps they've got renal or liver failure. The amber patients are those seen every 2 to 3 days, or the ones that are on green that need to be seen on discharge as a minimum. We also have embraced new technology to be able to do this. As I said, pharmacy purchased iPads and Pharmacy View app on the iPads that allow patients to be seen wherever they are in the hospital. This has made a real big difference for us in surgery because previously, as I said, we had the traditional pharmacy model, one pharmacist ward, so we didn't know patients who were on other wards who weren't seen by a pharmacist if they were on a high risk, if they were considered high risk. Now if patients have been identified as red on the surgical receiving ward or in medical receiving or actually on another NHS Lanarkshire site, we know where they are in surgery and we can go and see them. We also can quickly and easily see patients who haven't had their medicines reconciliation completed, and then we can go and see them too. Assess patients are assigned a red, amber, green, and that work has been done by our clinical pharmacy managers that allows us to prioritise the patient. How has that changed our previous model? Well, as I said, now all patients who are red or high-risk patients are reviewed in the wards that weren't previously covered, so wards 6, 7 and 9 were not previously covered, and we can now see all the patients. We see the step-down patients from ICU until they are no longer red, until they are amber, or until they go home. And we see our level 1 step-down patients until they are amber, or if they're in a ward with a pharmacist cover until they go home. Prior to implementing this model, it was only the patients who had were under the level 1 patient, the patients who had medicines reconciliation in Ward 7, but now all patients in Ward 7 will have their medicines reconciliation undertaken. And also all patients who are in Ward 7 are triaged. And again, if they moved to a different ward and they were red, they would be seen. So what are our outcomes? So changing the model of work has allowed us to roll out clinical pharmacy to a whole new ward, and we now offer pharmaceutical care to priority patients throughout the surgical directorate, even without those wards without a pharmacist in the traditional model. We staff daily attendance at the consultant ITU ward rounds, which we weren't able to do before, and this has been achieved without an increase in staffing levels. We are increasing medicines reconciliation, as you can see in one ward where it previously sat around 30% to now 100%, and that's obviously improving patient safety. We see all the patients at the interface between critical care and the general ward, where that's been shown to have problems before, and we see all the patients that have been triaged by the receiving patients as high risk. We don't see any more people, but we see more appropriate people. This is, it's Ali again here. This is a slide essentially of a poster which we have been trying to use as a small change in the receiving unit at Hare Myers. We became aware that over the 6 or 7 years that we've been working on medicines reconciliation, we had involved lots of different people. We had involved all sorts of grades of medical staff, juniors, middle grades, consultants. We had involved nurses in the emergency department and the receiving unit, charge nurses, advanced nurse practitioners. We involved clerical staff in the emergency department, pharmacists, clinical pharmacy technicians, and the one key group of people we had never really tried to involve as a particular test of change were the patients. And this was our first attempt, really, was to put a sign up above patients' beds. We did it in one room, the room closest to where the pharmacists usually sit on the ward. And it's really an attempt to try and include the patients in the medicines reconciliation process and to empower them a little bit. We were really keen to get away from the scenario where something happens and when you discuss it with the patient later on, they say, well, I thought it was a little bit funny, but I didn't like to say anything. And what we want is for them to tell us if they think something isn't quite right. You'll notice on this that it doesn't say, please speak to the pharmacist. What it says here is, please speak to us, in other words, one of the team. As I've said already, I'm not on the ward at the weekend, so if something happens on a Friday night, they could wait until Monday to speak to somebody. We want them to speak to anybody, be it a nurse or a doctor or a pharmacist. So the impact of our sign is that really it's not had a huge amount of impact, unfortunately. I was hoping for great things, but it hasn't, as far as we're aware, resulted in an increase in feedback from patients. So we need to have a wee think about why and how we're going to change this. We wondered if it was potentially the wrong part of the patient journey. Are they too poorly when they're in the receiving unit? But equally, we want to give them the opportunity while they're there, if they are capable of telling us if they have a problem. Is it that more changes are made in patients' medicines after they've had their initial consultant review, in which case are they asking questions about medicines further upstream when they're on other wards? It's possible that
relatives are the ones seeing this sign? Is it simply a technical, a physical thing that they cannot see the poster because it's above their bed, or there's too many things above the patient's bed and they're not focusing on it? But if it is relatives who are seeing it and raising questions, then our visiting is between 7 and 8 at night, so they're maybe just raising it with nurses at a time when they're too busy to document the questions. So as far as we're aware, we didn't have any negative impact. It certainly hasn't caused us any problems. And as a result, our next step was to put the poster above every bed to try and give the opportunity and empower every patient who comes into the unit. The next steps for Ward 2, which is Medical Receiving Unit at Hare Myers for medicines reconciliation, are that we have started having medicines as a specific discussion point at the morning handover meeting in the receiving hub. There is a referral board within the hub on the ward for patients that receiving clinicians, be they advanced nurse practitioners or medical staff. If they've had a particularly tricky patient, they just can't, they're worried about it, they don't feel they've managed to get right to an accurate list, then they put them on the referral board, and pharmacy will see those patients first. We now have a daily goal sheet, which is for the consultants on the ward round. That's in its infancy, and it's still being adapted, but Medicines Reconciliation has a place on that. And we're also trying to involve what simply we're calling it a cardex pause, which is obviously similar to the surgical pause, an operation. And what we're wanting there is just a couple of moments to reflect on the cardex, on the medicines reconciliation. Has it been done properly? And we're involving our advanced nurse practitioners in that to try and highlight the MedRec process and just make sure that it has been thought about for every patient on the ward round.
So part of this brief presentation today was to talk about our challenges. So this, within our primary care, we have had a medicines reconciliation list, of which 41 of our 98 practices signed up to. And basically, we have been incredibly challenged by this. Within Lanarkshire, we've not had any PLT for a number of years now, so getting a group of GPs together to talk to them en masse about how we can improve medicines reconciliation has been very, very difficult. We have worked with a couple of practices within the 98 practices to try and get about the bones of medicines reconciliation. The graph that I've shown is our reliability for all of the practices who have taken up the LES, and as I say, that was only about just under 50% of those practices. However, getting that information was no mean feat by any way, shape or form, as it all came from the payment people, the payment verification people. And so my next slide actually display how useful that information is. When I asked how are we doing with the medicines reconciliation list, this is essentially what I got back, and discovered that there was no engagement with the GPs. They were encouraged to monitor their own compliance, reliability, call it what you will. But basically, when we went out to speak to some of the GPs on a one-to-one basis, we found that there was a great deal of maybe fiddling the figures, as a non-political way of putting it, and that they were basically submitting data for payment. They weren't submitting data for any shape of, for improvement in any way, shape or form, and that if they submitted data that was 90% reliable or above, then they didn't have to submit data for another 3 months. So getting in amongst the primary care colleagues has been very, very difficult. And obviously now we no longer have our LES. That data has dried up. You'll notice that we don't have any data since October last year. And so that is a major challenge, and I would be happy to hear from colleagues how they have overcome this. How do you engage GPs in a large-scale quality improvement programme to improve medicines reconciliation without the infrastructure to support it? So, as part of our newer piece of work, as Jane mentioned at the beginning, we have identified medicines as a strategic priority, and we are working with one ward in particular to use insulin as an example. And we have identified that there are a number of insulin errors that have come about as a result of medicines reconciliation errors. And so basically we just wanted to use this opportunity to show how we are working towards reducing harm from insulin.
And I think, as Connie's saying, one of our opportunities we believe with this piece of work, and it is more a theory, if we have the medicines reconciliation as a key process, but the reducing harm from insulin as the outcome, will connecting those two together make it easier for staff to see that and why are we focusing on medicines reconciliation. So it's a great opportunity for us, I think, to learn our way into how do we get this process working reliably, but we can connect it with an outcome that demonstrates harm or no harm. And so we'd be keen to hear from others that maybe are doing work similarly that we could either collaborate with or learn from.
Here, I guess just trying to bring all of that together. Our 3 key points that we've been trying to work on are using the pharmacy view as a way to release pharmacy time to try to facilitate better medicines reconciliation at transitions, and that might be between, for example, intensive care and step down to a surgical ward. The other thing that we're trying to do is to engage patients in our medicines reconciliation process, and the last one is us trying to look at high-risk medicines as a new strategic priority. And I guess the 3 things that we've found difficult and would like help with is, and this is perhaps a question for everybody, is when should we be measuring medicines rec after admission? And I think that Ali's data really show that where the input of pharmacy does lead to safer medicines. We'd like help with how to engage primary care colleagues. And the last one, which I suppose is the holy grail, is how do we best go about clinical engagement and get that truly multidisciplinary, bearing in mind that we all know that medicines reconciliation is not just the sole domain of pharmacy.
And that's us, yeah.
Thank you very much for everyone in NHS Lanarkshire and Jane for pulling together the team to present. Connie, I'm just going to try and get the ball passed back so we can progress through the next slides. But also not to finish presentations with apologies, but I do understand a number of participants have been having issues when dialing in to the phone component of the WebEx today. Unfortunately, there appears to be an error in terms of a pre-registration ask that we didn't put onto this call, and so people are being requested to enter a PIN which has not been provided because we did not ask for it. So I do apologise for those who have had trouble trying to dial into the audio component. So thank goodness we've got it recorded so people will be able to hear this at the end of the WebEx. So for our team at NHS Lanarkshire, thank you very much for sharing both, I think, a fairly broad representation of work that's happening in Lanarkshire and also a very honest reflection in terms of the work that's currently happening. There have been a few questions in the chat box as we've gone through, which I'm happy to pick up. But can I also ask our host to actually open the lines to all participants that may be able to join in to this conversation, please?
All lines are open at this time.
Thank you very much. So if we can, just using the chat box, and I apologise, I know I'd sent a question through during one of the presentations, but was for consideration as part of the Q&A, so I apologise for any of the disturbance that caused at the Lanarkshire end. But I think it is being picked up through some of the other questions as well. So if we can start with some of the other questions, and it really is related to, I think, initially, the triaging or the flagging approach of patients through Pharmacy View. So the question that we've got from our colleagues, and I'm just going to read that out word for word, from our colleagues over at the Golden Jubilee, relates specifically to how do you identify the red patients, what criteria do you use, and who does the triaging? Is it the pharmacy staff or nursing staff, and how do you ensure it's reliable? So a nice, easy question to start with.
So the red, amber, green system was developed by the clinical pharmacy managers from the trust as a whole, and it was initially developed to be utilised when they were short-staffed on, say, the medical wards to allow them to prioritise the priority patients. As I said, we were always understaffed in surgery, so we're using it to triage all our patients. The red criteria is the things that you would expect for patients that need to see the next day. So it's patients on high-risk meds, patients who are on drugs which are interacting that need monitoring, people on drugs with TDM, as I said, gentamicin, vancomycin, people with renal or liver disease, people who have got complex medical issues, patients who are nil by mouth, have got swallowing issues. That's all the red sort of patients. And actually, anybody that the pharmacist who's triaging them think they need to be seen the next day. It's really very on the onus of the pharmacist that's reviewing them to say, do they need seen tomorrow? Well, yes, they do. Even if they don't fit the criteria of the pharmacy manager group, they are then ready to be seen the next day. The amber are those patients that probably don't need seen the next day, but will need seen in the next few days. And then the green are those patients that are considered as a minimum, so need to be seen on discharge. And quite often we do have those patients in surgery, the young, constipated patients who have had their med rec done and just need a check on their discharge going home. They don't need seen by a clinical pharmacist every day. However, our more complex patients do. They're also assigned red if they have been in critical care or in our level 1, and that means we identify them quickly when they step down, even if it's a ward that doesn't have a pharmacist under the traditional model. They can also be identified as red in medical receiving. Also in Lanarkshire, we have some of the wards are the local specialty, so we have all the urology patients in Lanarkshire. So if a patient has been seen in on a different hospital and has been assigned a red because the other hospitals use this, we can then see them. It's a really good way of being able to see patients who have been identified as red by a pharmacist. We don't have a nurse referral system. We have tried it before in some of the wards that don't have a pharmacist, and we found it was very poorly done. Either the nurses referred everyone or they referred no one. It's possibly something to work towards, but it's not something we do at the moment. How do we ensure it's reliable? Well, as a test of change when we've been doing this, we've been seeing patients who we've maybe not seen that day, and to see how many days have not been seen as being red, and really we're generally picking people up the next day if they weren't seen the day before. That's the only way we're doing it at the moment.
Thank you for that. And I'm just wondering, are there any participants on the call that perhaps do have nursing staff almost acting as a triage or referrals to pharmacy out with a pharmacy view? Wow. I have been reassured that the chat lines are now open, so everybody on the call. Can I just check that others can speak and can be heard?
Yes.
Excellent. So I may assume also that the silence may mean that no one else is actually doing that at the moment, but it's just more to see if there's any boards that may be involving nursing with this triaging process. I mean, for me, it's confirmation of the fact that using a resource that's limited to reach the patients that require the service the most, and that's, I guess, what the approach you're taking with the red, amber, and green. So if I can go through again, just double-checking any other questions. There's a lot of private chat in my inbox that I need to apologise. People requesting access to the call because of a PIN issue, which I'm just trying to filter out while we get to the questions. There's some sympathy with people that haven't been able to manage to engage GPs with no structure and funding, and that's coming from Deirdre in Tayside. Rachel, I know you're on the call. Can I put you on the spot in terms of how you've engaged with GPs in GG&C in the work?
Hello, can you hear me?
Absolutely, yes.
Hi. Yeah, I think the difficulty now is with the absence of the previous kind of contractual levers that we had. When we first started the work back in 2013, we did a number of, so I guess this is getting back to Connie's point around data for improvement and not data for payment, and we had a series of sort of evening learning sessions with GPs to make it quite clear that the data wasn't for judgment and it wasn't for payment, and it really was for improvement. And I think if you haven't got the ability to, to have PLTs or to have training to explain, what it's for, it's a very different approach to what they were used to doing. So I think that's been a real limitation probably for you if you haven't been able to deliver kind of training around the background of what it was all about. So, I mean, we delivered a number, I can't remember how many it was maybe 4 or 5 evening sessions, over the space of a couple of months with GPs around the MedRec work sort of way back in 2013. We now don't have the levers around an enhanced service for this year. I think practices still, must see the benefit of it because we have about 10% of our practices still submitting data to us around MedRec, and there is now no payment for it. So I think they have seen the benefit of it, and it's definitely been one of the pieces of work that's been most positively evaluated when we got reflections back from the GP. So I think once they started to do it, they saw the benefit of it. But yeah, I totally appreciate it at the moment, and as Deirdre obviously said in the message, it's difficult at the moment, with the changes in the contract. And I have put in the chat box, I think probably the route we might have to go down is around the clusters and having the cluster quality improvement leads, and perhaps having some sort of off-the-shelf QI interventions like MedRec and DMARDs that until they sort of are mature enough to identify their own priorities, that there's something off-the-shelf that they can use. That's probably going to be our approach over the next year until the new contract is a bit clearer.
And thank you for that reflection. If I need to echo what you said, at a national level, that's exactly the kind of discussions that are going on about how we might engage GPs in future quality improvement work based on the contractual changes that are about to or have landed and are about to be impacted, particularly how we work with clusters as a new way of engagement. And indeed, the conversation has been around the need to assist with potential priorities when the clusters are just newly formed and perhaps don't know exactly what they should be doing. So it is that balance of allowing local prioritisation, but also allowing and providing some guidance with some suggested things they might want to get involved in to start with. So thank you for that reflection. The only other thing I probably could add to that was our visit to Dumfries and Galloway earlier this year as an SPSP team. And I think what reaffirmed the opportunities for engagement is actually picking a topic that resonates with the particular practice. So in D&G, they've actually got a local enhanced service around non-steroidal prescribing. However, one of the practices before even a local enhanced service or contractual lever was even announced had gone back, and that actually made all of the changes and improvements that they thought they needed to do, and their data reflected that well before any contract or payment for service was offered. And it's because of the fact that the topic was resonated so strongly with their GPs that they just got on and did the work. But it's not easy engaging at such a scale that you've described, I think, Connie, with the number of GP practices in Lanarkshire.
Yeah. David, it's Jane here. I think, so as the colleague was just sharing, and apologies, I've forgotten her name already, I think our opportunity is, and we've started some early dialogue with both our North and South Health and Social Care partnerships as they're setting up their clusters and identifying their cluster leads to start to kind of, suggest to them the importance of focusing on transitions and medicines and some of the other harms that we're focusing on. So hopefully that can be something we can progress to, but it is a very challenging backdrop in which, GPs are practicing with no dedicated protected time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. There was I guess I will confess the question I put to your team as you were presenting privately. It is more to do, I think, related to your question as well, about when should we be measuring MedRec post-admission. So a lot of previous WebEx discussions have focused on roles and responsibilities, and I'm just wondering, is there locally agreed who actually is primarily responsible for completing medication or medicines reconciliation at the admission process. You mentioned in mental health there is no pharmacy service, so nurses do that, but then there was discussion around whether you measure pre- or post-pharmacy review in the acute care setting. So the question really is, do you actually have agreed roles and responsibilities quite clearly set out within Lanarkshire around medication reconciliation?
So I think the short answer to that, David, is no. We don't have a reliably, an SOP for roles and responsibilities, and that's possibly part of the reason why it's grown up different in different places. One of the things, I suppose, that our next test of change are doing in acute receiving with bringing it more into line with our daily goals. We're trying to do a few things there, so getting the senior engagement, so that it's quite clear that it's the role of the senior doctors to be involved. We're trying to involve our advanced nurse practitioners so that their role is clearly delineated, that their role is at the end of the patient ward round, that before we go to the next one, we ask, is the medicine safe for this patient? So I think that's probably quite a good point, David, that we could do with being clearer, have more clarity in and around roles and responsibilities, and that's something we ought to work on.
Thank you. And I guess that is a conversation that I think is a continuing one. It's fair to say that I don't think everywhere and all boards have actually got clarity around that, but there are pockets where it's quite clear, and that's actually guided how they therefore collect any improvement information around medicines reconciliation. So just looking quickly still at our chat box, and our colleagues, and you probably have seen this, but our colleagues from the Golden Jubilee are very much thankful for the information you've shared around the triaging approach, because that's something they're looking at implementing themselves. So again, thank you for sharing that. Deirdre's asking particularly around the insulin work, and I know it's early days, but specifically have you implemented, I'm assuming this is an insulin prescribing and administration record and in Lanarkshire, and if so, has this led to any reduction in insulin incidence?
So the answer to that question, as you said, David, is no, not yet. We are still at the very beginning of this piece of work. Literally, we've not actually had an engagement event yet, so no, ask us next year.
Okay. And I guess the other component, if I can add to a question that too, noting, again, it's early days, the ambition or the aim that you've got is around reducing insulin harm. And I know insulin has been identified by a number of boards as an area of interest. And I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to share, once decided, if it's not known at the moment, what types of harm related to insulin are you particularly looking at? Is it a focus on hypoglycemia, or is it around prescribing errors, or what kind of focus do you think this might take in your board?
I think the outcome measure will be a reduction in hypos. Okay. Certainly from our first little bit of scoping that we've done on one ward, in the pilot ward, we identified that there was five hypos in the space of 10 days. And so what we're trying to do is start the conversation of, is that hypo preventable? Or is it as a result of trying to get the insulin dose right? So that is an interesting conversation in itself. And as I say, we're still at the very early days, but we'll be looking at reducing hypos initially.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So with the lines open, I just wanted to make sure, are there anybody else on the call that wanted to ask a question that has not put it into the chat box? It's a unique opportunity to speak, and we'd most welcome and love to hear from you. No? Silence is always a golden consent. I'm going to take that as an opportunity to move on. So again, Lanarkshire, thank you very much for sharing that with us. I hope that you found it also useful to hear and get some feedback from people through the chat box on what you've presented. As a process for us, as I say, we're going to be publishing the recording of this and the slide set onto our website early next week, and we'll update our key learning summary document with the 3 key points that Lanarkshire invited people to contact them to learn more about. Just in closing, it's an ask for us, and I'll be tweeting this later on. We're really keen to get feedback on the overall structure of our WebEx series to date. We've held monthly WebExes since March, and we've tested the prior to that in November and December last year. And we're really keen to make sure that this is the right way of supporting learning and sharing, so we're looking for your feedback. Ideally, we're looking for immediate feedback in terms of the fact that we're hoping to close the survey tomorrow. It's been open for 3 weeks, and this will be the 4th week. So if you are following us on Twitter, please look out for the link that we tweeted yesterday, but I'll retweet again today, just as really looking forward to getting your feedback following today's WebEx and the previous ones in March. So we're not over yet. We know the WebEx series is continuing, and we're actually hearing from our colleagues in the island boards next month. And then you'll see that we've got Highland and Lothian to finish off the year. And depending on what feedback we do receive in terms of the evaluation, you may see a change in the style or the format of the WebEx and how we're sharing information. But one of the things we did learn fairly quickly on from initial feedback is the importance of opening the lines at the end of our call so people got an opportunity to speak. So we really do want to encourage people to use that opportunity to be able to talk during the question and answer part. But if there are no further questions, the only kind of thing I might do as an opportunity more than anything else is to make sure people are aware of the National SPSP Conference that we're holding on the 29th of November. There will be a breakout session dedicated to medicines, and we'll be contacting all of our key contacts and stakeholders to provide an opportunity to be part of that program. We'll be focusing on deterioration and the concepts of looking at deterioration due to high-risk medicines, and also deterioration due to omitted medicines or missed medicines. So we really hope that that date is in your diary, and all of the attendance through boards is going to be managed by program managers. So Jane from Lanarkshire has got the privilege of managing that for all the delegates from NHS Lanarkshire. But for other boards, if you are interested, please make sure that you contact your program manager. So with no further ado, thank you all very much for joining us today. Apologies again for any of the technical difficulties, particularly with people that have been asked to provide a PIN to join the phone call, which is something that was out of our control, but we do apologise for that. But we do look forward to speaking with you again next month. So thank you all very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's conference. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect. Have a great day.